At Arm's Length, Episode 1, Prologue. Claire scrutinized Obehi, the girlfriend of the week, who was busy typing non-stop on her mobile. Why did she think the wheel would be reinvented on this occasion? She sighed. It was the same story as always. Sophisticated, pretty, but just another empty vessel as soon as she opened her mouth. She didn't understand how more money was spent on the education of the present generation, and yet they found it difficult to hold a simple conversation or have an informed opinion on any trending topic. Well, except fashion, in Obehi's case. She was sure that she was up to date in that department, just from looking at what she was wearing. Claire was tempted to ask her what the capital of any country outside her shopping scope was, just to hear her ask if that place really existed. Switching her attention to Alex, her son, did not make her feel all warm and fuzzy, as he was busy on his phone too. Looking around the restaurant, Claire felt a familiar irritation begin to creep in. Putting down her napkin, she signaled the waiter. "Can I have the bill, please?" "Mother, you've barely touched your plates and you're leaving? We've only been here 30 minutes. Had you told me you had to leave early, we could have met up some other day." 30 agonizing minutes that I will never get back, in which both of you have been typing on your mobiles like the burden of solving a major world conflict rests solely on your shoulders. I made time for this. I cancelled a lunch date because I hadn't seen you in a week. I'd honestly rather be at home with my feet up, watching my favorite telenovela, trying to discover if Ricardo Roberto Eduardo da Silva pushed Conchita Paloma del Mar Palencia down the stairs, which is infinitely more entertaining than what I have been offered here. The waiter arrived, and the expected and familiar struggle to pay the bill ensued. Of course, Obehi did not deem it fit to participate in, observing the scene with a cold detachment. Claire, to drive the point home of how upset she was, handed the waiter her credit card and without saying one more word, punched in her secret code, nodded at the girlfriend of the week, picked up her bag, got up and headed towards the door. If Stanley, her chauffeur, was surprised by how short her lunch date had been, he showed no emotions and opened the car door for her to get into the back seat. She stopped, sensing her son had followed her outside. "Mom, come on, don't leave. I'm sorry, it was rude of us. I really had to send off some work emails. I promise I wasn't chatting. But you're right, everything could have waited." "Alex, sometimes I wonder where you're heading to. Is there a plan for your future? You are 34 years old, and so far the girlfriends you have introduced me to all seem to be cut from the same pattern. You really worry me. Do you know how many girls I saw you with last year?" He raised an eyebrow, understanding that it was a rhetorical question, and hoping that the answer would not render him unable to defend himself. 17! Who dates 17 women in a year? But I don't know why I am surprised. Apart from Nnamdi, your other two friends and yourself seem to believe that you are actors in an unending fantasy movie. You are allergic to anything remotely resembling a serious commitment, afraid to lose your freedom, and I don't know how you all can't see just how enslaved to your lifestyles you've become. All these girls see you, and they know that they will be able to get into shops with articles that have waiting lists. Your last relationship lasted what? 4 days? And yet you still managed to take her to Dubai in that time for a shopping spree. You know what? Continue on the same path. You will deserve the girl you end up with. With those last words and a disapproving look in the direction of her only son, Claire Jacobs got into the waiting car and slammed the door for good measure. Mark, George, and Nnamdi were already seated in their private booth of the exclusive members-only bar they belonged to, drinks in hand, when Alex walked in. There were various bottles on the table, and the guys were talking and laughing. They shook hands, and the newcomer sat down heavily. "What's up? Why the long face?" Nnamdi asked. The four friends had met in secondary school as teenagers. University had separated them. Yet adulthood and life in Lagos had brought them back together years later. "I invited my mother for lunch, and she ended up upset, paying and leaving early. She was very unimpressed with Ubehi, and it seems, with almost all my girlfriends. Somehow, after the lecture I got, I started asking myself, what am I doing with her? It just feels like almost all the women I've dated in the last few years just seem to want to go shopping, either for me to take them or for me to give them money to go shopping. Don't get me wrong, I don't have a problem treating and spoiling them, but it feels like there's nothing else beneath the surface. What I see is exactly what the relationship is. I am bored. It's been too long since a woman has piqued my interest. I know my mother wants me to settle down, get married, give her grandchildren. But it terrifies me when I think of spending the rest of my life with any of the women I've dated in the past. So why do I go out with them? Maybe because you're running away from anything serious, afraid that it will be the end of an era, the end of you walking into places and women swooning over you. To be fair, it's not just you. George and Mark are on the same self-destruct journey. This last comment got a chuckle from Mark and a scowl from George. Care to elaborate? Alex asked Nnamdi, who had expressed his thoughts in a very matter-of-fact way. After which he took another sip of his drink, all eyes on him. I know we're all in different places in our lives. I'm married, and you guys are apparently searching for the one. But it does feel like we're still in school, and every girl that walks in front of you interests you. But only for a fleeting moment, like you're allergic to getting into something real, and prefer being with girls that are difficult to hold simple conversations with. For example, George, that Hilda girl you went out with a few times last year told me that she had to change her email address because she forgot her password. I literally looked at her with my mouth open. Could she not simply recover it? Hey, the only one complaining here is Alex, and I still don't understand what's about. He only has to raise his eyes from his glass, and he makes eye contact with one attractive female or another, normally leaving the ugly friend for one of us to console. Not that I'm complaining. The four men laughed at George's remark. Seriously though, maybe Obehi has run her course, and you need a new challenge. At that precise moment, an important-looking middle-aged man walked into the lounge and was escorted to a table by a waiter. George raised his glass in his direction and said, "Now, here's a challenge you definitely will not win. Try dating the daughter of that man, Gabrielle Ibrahim, aka the Ice Queen, or the Iceberg, with capital letters. That girl has a reputation for looking at you in such a way that your blood runs cold and freezes in your veins. I know who he is. Difficult not to know the man that owns half of Lagos. I think I've met his daughter and can't remember her name, but it definitely wasn't Gabrielle," Alex said as he observed Andrew Ibrahim talking animatedly to the men he had joined at the table. "That must have been Antonia, her younger sister. I doubt you've met Gabrielle. She doesn't frequent your social circles, or any for that matter. But you might have heard of her brand. She created and owns GI," George explained. "Really? That's her? She's Ngozi's heroine," Nnamdi said. "You know her shoes and bags are sold internationally. They even have a waiting list. I tell you, that woman has gotten me out of the doghouse on more than one occasion. I have the store manager on speed dial, and I remember once being up almost all night trying to bid online at the auction they hold yearly for 10 exclusive designs. I lost it, of course. It was crazy how high people were willing to go. Good thing it was meant to be a surprise for my wife, so no harm done. The brand is a habitual of the New York and London fashion weeks, as she's partnered with some of the most important clothes designers that normally participate. See what marriage does to you? Nnamdi has all this useless information stored up and occupying space in his brain about female shoes and bags. I am sure you've even visited her shop. Mark teased him, taking a sip from his glass. Of course, it's like a museum, with glass display cases and very friendly shop assistants that greet you with a smile and open the door for you when you arrive and then when you leave, Nnamdi said. They even ask if you want something to drink. It's the only shop Ngozi drags me to that I pretend not to want to go to, but secretly don't mind being there, with the excuse that she also has a line of shoes and accessories for men. I find I am taken there very often. Okay, she's successful. We are now all clear on that. But is she pretty? Because you've seen the kind of women Alex dates, Mark asked. I'm beginning to think that my mother's right, and that we are a group of superficial men with very little emotional empathy, Alex said. Hmm, a woman difficult to get at, and nicknamed the Ice Queen. I'm intrigued, to say the least. She's pretty, I've seen her. Three pairs of eyes turned to George, who smiled enigmatically as he raised his glass to his friends. Alex, Ngozi will kill you, and then me, if you do anything to hurt this woman, Nnamdi said. Her dream is to interview her and have her on the cover of her magazine. Plus, aren't we a little too old for games like this? They never end well for at least one of the parties. Relax, Nnamdi, Alex tried to reassure him. This isn't a bet or anything similar. Variety is the spice of life. You never know. This might be the start of something lasting. I doubt it, but like I said, you never know. I have to break up with Ubehi though. You can't go for a girl like Gabrielle and have a girlfriend. Nnamdi made a sign indicating that he was watching him. Alex signaled the waiter and asked that the bill from the table of the older men be put on his tab, and that a bottle of champagne be sent to the table in question. That's fast thinking, George said. I can see that you've decided to take things seriously, and we all know how important the parents of a girl can be. I know you said it's not a bet, but the rest of us can still try and get some fun out of this. No, George. And if I even get a whiff of money being exchanged between you lot. Fine, fine, I'll behave. You're taking the fun out of everything. But I guess watching you fail at something for the first time in your life will be totally worth it, George replied, Alex maliciously, signaling the waiter. At that precise moment, the waiter presented Alex's gift, and each of the four older men looked in their direction. Alex raised his glass at them and smiled. Shortly afterwards, Chief Ibrahim and his friends got up to leave, and Alex stood up and walked purposefully towards them. Good evening, sir. I am Alexander Jacobs. He made a curt bow indicating respect, knowing Chief Ibrahim was a traditional man who would appreciate it. The other three men were walking ahead of them in the direction of the exit. The now owner of Wishing Star Airlines. I was acquainted with your father. May his soul rest in peace, said Chief Ibrahim. You seem to be doing quite well, maintaining the quality of the company. I have used your services a few times, both for domestic and international flights. It is quite reliable. I must commend you on that. Thank you, sir, said Alex. My father set very high standards, and I'm glad to know that they're still intact. I just wanted to introduce myself and ask if it would be possible for you to put me in contact with your daughter. With Antonia? No, Gabrielle. Chief Ibrahim raised an eyebrow in surprise, making ask himself what he was getting himself into. Why do you want to meet my daughter? I'd like to ask her out on a date, sir. With your permission, of course. You summoned me, father, and here I am, as always, obedient to your call. Gabrielle walked into her father's private office at home and took a seat across from him, the huge mahogany desk separating them. Chief Ibrahim was signing some contracts that his secretary, Ada, had brought from the head office, and she waited for him to do so she could take them back. Gabrielle looked around the tastefully furnished room as she waited to learn why she had been called, then smiled at Ada in greeting. The woman left with the documents a moment later. I asked to see you at a convenient time for you. Relax, we're not in a court of law. You look well, as usual. Gabrielle nodded in appreciation as she waited to be told the reason for her visit. Not a man to waste time on pleasantries, especially with her, she knew it wouldn't take long before she was informed. Alexander Jacobs wants to meet you. Gabrielle lifted an eyebrow in surprise. That she had not expected. Why? For some strange reason, he seems interested in dating you. Really? Gabrielle asked. Well, the feeling is not mutual, and the reason why he should talk to you instead of me completely escapes me. I hope you didn't waste his time and told him that dating him is not on my bucket list. I did no such thing. He wanted to do things the proper way and asked if I could arrange a meeting, her father said. Arrange a meeting? Did you both also fix a wedding date while you were at it? She asked. Father, look at your calendar. It says that we have entered the 21st century. Men now walk up to the woman in question and speak to her directly. We are way past chaperones and arranged marriages. I found his approach respectful and said you would, of course, meet him. You can't do any better than Alexander Jacobs in the whole of Africa, or the whole world, if you want me to be more specific. Gabrielle looked at her father, mouth open in surprise as she struggled to maintain her composure, closing her eyes and mentally counting to 10. Yes, you will go. You are a 34-year-old woman, still in her father's house and with no apparent prospect of a change in status. So, if the candidate of every father's dreams shows a healthy interest in you, you will go out with him, and there is nothing more to be said on that subject. In your house? Father, I live alone and have been supporting myself for years. I don't care if you live in China. To all effects, you are under my care until you go to your husband's house. You had better be on your best behavior and not drive this one away. Because if you do, you will have a very serious problem with me. Gabrielle once again closed her eyes and proceeded to count to 10, not trusting herself to speak, as she knew she would regret it. Holding on to her bag, she got up. I will not meet this man. I do not want to date him. And if that causes a problem between us, I will accept it, like I have everything else you have done to me. But I will not accept you dictating who I should date. I have to get back to work now, father. She turned around and marched towards the door. They call you the Ice Queen and the iceberg, he told her. One does not know if they are describing a type of lettuce or a human being. Either way, those are not nicknames one should be proud of. Stopping in her tracks, she turned to look at him and smiled. Would you rather they called me something else? Don't be impertinent, Chief Ibrahim roared, looking like a lion with his flowing traditional attire and his beard. Fine. I do not wish to continue arguing with you. I will meet this man on one condition. Which is? Chief Ibrahim asked, observing her through narrowed eyes. That you tell me where my mother is buried. That again? Can't you let it go? The man sighed in exasperation. No, I won't ever let it go. I need to know where she is. I want to go and see her, pray on her grave, like everyone has the right to do for a loved one. I am not being unreasonable, Father. I will only meet Alexander Jacobs if you give me the answer to the question I have been asking you for so many years. Father and daughter locked eyes, both strong willed and unrelenting, like two predators about to attack each other, with no spectator sure of the outcome of that particular fight. Fine, I will tell you, but only after 5 dates, he said. That's the condition. 3, 5, and you can take it or leave it. It is non negotiable. Gabrielle studied her father intently for a moment. The years had taught her that he was not an easy adversary. She had watched him wrestle and bring down worthy opponents throughout the years. Fine, but just so you know, there is no way on this earth that I will marry Alexander Jacobs. I am seeing someone. Who? Her father asked. And since when? His name is Paul. He's an engineer and works for an oil company, and we have been seeing where things could go for the last 6 months. Well, this Paul has not made his intentions known to me yet, so to all effects, he does not exist or count. 6 months is more than enough time for any respectable man to know what he wants and visit the family of a girl. You are not in your 20s and do not have the luxury of being in a long-term relationship. This Paul is a time waster, her father declared. Gabrielle turned around furiously, biting her lip so the angry retorts fighting to come out would remain in her. Oh, and Gabrielle, I will ask Alexander to give me a report after you have both gone on the 5 dates. I would advise that if you want to get the information you so much seem to desire, to be on your best behavior. So he tells me that you are charming and requests a date for his family to visit us for the introductory ceremony. Alexander Jacobs? The Alexander Jacobs? Owner and CEO of Wishing Star Airlines? Do you know how many girls wish their fathers would set up a date with him? Gabrielle glared at her friend Sandra in annoyance. She had called and asked her to meet up for lunch after the horrible exchange with her father. As usual, the other girl was fixating on the most unimportant aspect of the situation. Of everything that I've said to you, that part is all that matters? Not that once again, after ignoring me for as long as possible, he then proceeds to make decisions for me, not caring what I want or how I feel, dangling the whereabouts of my mother's grave as bait, and forcing me to go on a date with that man? Fine, let's talk about the individual my father thinks would make a perfect husband for me. Putting aside all your romantic fantasies and illusions, and hoping that after all these years you do know me a little, what exactly do you think we have in common? Sandra stopped the dance she had started with her arms midway to listen and answer what she had just been asked. Reality settling in, she understood the mixture of emotions Gabrielle was experiencing. Yes, on the surface, he's not at all suitable for you, and you probably have very little in common, like you rightly said. But maybe he's exactly what you need. You live buried in your work, like the world outside doesn't matter or exist, except when lately you've been on dates with Paul. But I think you need an Alexander in your life, and Alexander needs a Gabrielle, and not just any Gabrielle. He needs you. I thought you liked Paul. Why are you encouraging me to go on a date with another guy? It feels very dishonest of me to do that. I think he's okay, Sandra said. I agree with your father that he should have made his intentions clear by now. You've been dating for 6 months. That's ample time to size someone up. What is he waiting for? Well, we both work a lot, and it's important to get to know each other. I am not in a hurry. Why is the rest of the world? Anyway, I'll explain the situation to Paul. There's no way I will see someone behind his back. innocent as those dates will be. Any other course of action from you would be disappointing, Sandra agreed. So, when are you meeting him? My father gave him my number. Hopefully, he will forget this crazy idea and not call or lose it. On the other hand, I finally got a promise from my father regarding my mother, so if he contacts me, I will ask that he comes to the workshop and hope it counts as state one. Don't forget not to be rude, condescending, and generally off putting. I'll have to go home with you to select the outfits you'll be wearing for the rest of the week. Something tells me this first date will happen very soon. Sandra, eat your food. It's getting cold, an exasperated Gabrielle stated. Alexander Jacobs? A horrified looking Paul asked during their dinner date that night. Yes, I can see you've heard of him, so his reputation precedes him. I just wanted to clear the air about exactly what these 5 dates are really about, to avoid any form of misunderstanding. You know how important my mother is to me, and I thought my father would take the secret to his grave, but now there's a glimmer of hope. Please say you understand. Paul held her hand, and she smiled at him. Of course I do. I just don't like the situation. It feels like your father has decided I am not good enough for you and has found another option before even meeting me. And like you mentioned, this Alexander has a serious playboy reputation. I don't trust him. But you trust me, and I promise all our dates will be in public and are just a means to an end. You have nothing, absolutely nothing to worry about. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, tell me how your trip went. Did you like Angola? I heard the people are very welcoming and friendly. Gabrielle got home but could not settle down and fall asleep. The thought that she was about to find out where her mother's body was made her nervous. It felt like she was about to cross an important threshold in her life, and finally, closure was almost within her hands. She closed her eyes and prayed to God for the patience to get through the dates with Alexander Jacobs, remembering her father had warned her that he had to give a positive report about their time spent together. Good morning. Your secretary said I could come right in. Gabrielle was startled by the deep voice speaking to her. She had been immersed in the patterns she was cutting for a bag, and so had not heard the man come in. She looked up into the amused eyes of Alexander Jacobs. Mr. Jacobs. Alex, please. Alexander, I understand from my father that you wish to go on a date with me. Tell me, is this a common practice with you? Asking a woman on a date, he asked mockingly, raising an eyebrow. Asking her father's permission, because, let's be honest, this is just a way to get into my father's good books, but not in mine. On the other hand, if this is your modus operandi, there must be a reward for your head from a good number of irate fathers, she replied, meeting his gaze squarely. I did not have your contact details, and coincidentally met your father. There is no need to read any more into the situation. Mr. Jacobs, I honestly don't have time to try to delve into the intricate ways in which your mind works. I'd like to save us both some time. Should you have made a bet with one of those friends you often meet up with in a bar, best you pay them up front now. I am neither naive nor stupid. If this is out of boredom, again, take my advice and find some other interest to occupy your time. However, I made a deal with my father, and I stand to gain from these 5 dates. I suggest we save ourselves the torture and count this as one, so we only have 4 more to go. No! We will go on 5 dates in which you will make a visible effort to enjoy yourself. He bowed slightly and turned around to leave. 76 centimeters. Excuse me? He looked at her. assuming she was reading measurements out loud from what she was working on, but found her staring directly at him, her expression not having changed during their brief exchange. That is the length of my arm, fingertips included, and the distance you are always to keep from me. Text me the address of our first meeting, and I'll be there. I am sure you do not need help finding the way out. With those words, she returned her attention to the fabric on the work table, and picking up a pair of scissors, proceeded to start cutting. Alex turned around and walked out. I have never met a more infuriating woman in my life. The worst thing was that it wasn't an act. She really has no interest in going out with me. Alex nursed his drink in evident anger, much to the amusement of his three friends seated in their usual spot. I can't believe I broke up with Obehi for this. It's all your fault, he accused Nnamdi, pointing a finger at him. The man accused burst out laughing and had to take a moment to compose himself before replying. So? You broke up with Obehi one day earlier than you would have. Big deal! I've known you for over 20 years, and this is the first time I have ever seen you get worked up over a female. She really got under your skin. I like her already. No wonder people call her the Ice Queen, Alex said. She practically looked right through me the whole time. How does she expect to get married if she treats men that way? Well, I have no idea why she agreed to go on those dates. From what I heard, she's been seeing someone for the past few months. A friend frequents a restaurant they often go to, and she does not keep him at arm's length. They hold hands and look deeply into each other's eyes. My friend has seen that much. Alex frowned at Georgie's revelation. If that was the case, why on earth did she agree to see him? Perhaps it was simply to prove a point to her father. She had mentioned him. So, I take it that you're ready to give up? Mark asked, doing his best to suppress a smile. It really isn't worth all the trouble. Plus, making an effort with women is not your strong suit. I've literally never seen you go out of your way for any woman. Of course not. I'm going to see this through. She's going to have to sit and enjoy, or at least pretend to enjoy, every single one of those outings, Alex stated firmly, not stopping to consider that he would be punishing himself in the process. Ngozi asks if you can arrange for them to accidentally meet before you spoil things. She also wondered where you intend taking her and added, and these are her words, not mine. If he thinks he can impress her with his usual bag of tricks, he has another thing coming. Nnamdi added, trying to be helpful. Trying being the key word here. I hadn't thought that far. What's wrong with dinner at Shea Ola? It even has a waiting list and I can effortlessly get us a table. Didn't you celebrate your anniversary there? So it's good enough for Ngozi, but not for Gabrielle. Alex asked his friends that spent the rest of the evening offering one unhelpful suggestion after another. For the second time in 2 days, he had to watch someone try not to laugh. Only his mother was not as successful as his friends. Not that they had fared much better. Alex, I am happy Obehi and you have parted ways. The thought of spending the rest of my life having to sit through insufferable visits was agonizing. But why would you set yourself up for failure? What do you mean? You don't believe I can make her like me? Alex asked. Maybe the real you, which you hardly ever give people a chance to see. But from the little I've heard of her, you both have practically nothing in common. Your friends are right. You can't impress her by flying her to London for lunch and Paris for dinner. She doesn't need you to pay for one need or the other. The girl is rich. I mean, she has real money in the bank. How do you know all this? Making a sign for him to wait, his mother left the room still chuckling and shaking her head. She returned a few minutes later with 3 plastic bags and proceeded to carefully review their contents as she handed them to him. These bags will one day be collector's items. Look at the quality The design, the finish, impressive. They are part of her exclusive collection. Every year, she releases only 10 exclusive designs outside of the seasonal collection. They are sold in an online auction that people from all over the world participate in. This bag cost me 9 million naira, his mother stated with evident pride, looking at her prized possessions. Alex whistled, guessing no woman of his mother's status wanted to buy from the normal yearly collection if they could help it. Mommy, you spent 9 million on a bag? I needed a small pick-me-up. From the look on your face, I best not tell you the cost of the rest. It's an investment. You might need my help one day, and if you treat me well, I will bail you out. I'm not going to remind you of my net worth, but let me get this straight. You bought the bags not to use them, but to keep them wrapped in plastic? Why? His mother gave him the look she normally reserved for when she did not expect him to understand her. And then he'd go ahead and prove her right. Do you know how many people bid for these bags and are willing to pay even double what I did? They write me asking to inform them first should I want to sell. Like I said, it's insurance for the future. I do take them out at least once a year. Alex shook his head, still pondering the wisdom behind the actions of some women. He gave up trying to understand the reasoning behind it. You buy expensive cars? I buy bags. Concentrate your energy on winning that woman over. That, believe me, will be no small feat. But let me tell you something. For some reason, she has kept people at bay, not allowing anyone into her privacy. We know next to nothing about her. If this is a game to you, let her be. You have won many battles, but a great warrior knows when to walk away. I actually pity you, son. You can't charm your way into this one. I'm going to have so much fun watching as this real-life soap opera unravels. She burst out laughing. Alex thought that if only to make a few people eat their words, he was not going to fail on this self-imposed mission. Plus now, his curiosity was really piqued. To stay up to date with my latest episodes, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications.